All right, so my goal for today is to cover chapter 7. Um, and then after chapter 7, we might jump into chapter 9 to get a little bit caught up. And then also give you time to work on your group projects if you need that at the end of class. Okay, so we started class by watching the scene where Alice meets the Cheshire Cat and she asks him for which way to go. And what is his response to her? Depends on where you want to go. And then she says, doesn't really matter. And so then his response was, it doesn't matter which way you want to go, right? It doesn't matter which way you go because if you don't have a specific direction in mind, then it doesn't matter. Like what you want to do is you want to make sure you have a specific direction in mind. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit with goal setting for today. Okay. Um, and with goal setting, I'm going to pass these out. If you'll take one, pass it back. Um, take one, pass it back. There is a digital copy of this in class in the modules. Um, but essentially, we're going to work on this together and we're going to talk about goals. And goals should be one of the best ways to write goals is to do them in a using the SMART model. Okay. So as soon as everybody has their paper, we'll go over that. But how many of y'all write goals? Anybody of y'all write your goals down? How many of you have goals? Okay. How many of you write them down? Okay. Less hands up. That's okay. So the studies have shown that if you write your goal down and you put it in a place where it's very prominent, where you can see it on a regular basis, the chances of achieving from where absolutely. So using the page, the handout that we have right here, we are going to write some SMART goals. Okay. Now, the acronym SMART, obviously, they're all capital letters. So it is an acronym for something. This allows us to better write our goals. That's horrible lettering. Hold on. Here we go. What does the S stand for? Anybody know what the S stands for? Specific. Okay, our goals should be specific. They should be narrow focused so that way we know where we're headed. The M stands for, I heard it, yes, measurable. We have to know at the end, when we reach the end of our goal, we have to know, did we achieve our goal or did we not achieve our goal? It has to be measurable in some way, okay? The A is attainable. We want to have challenging goals, but we also want them not to be so challenging that we're never going to attain them, okay? The R is relatable. And I used to, um, hold on. There we go. I used to just kind of breeze by the relatable because obviously it's relatable to you. You're the one who's writing the goal. Okay. But when it comes to relatable, I want you to think, what is it related to? Okay. Is The fact that you want to visit a different country, is that's a goal of yours to travel. Maybe that's related to your love of different cultures. Okay. Maybe the maybe the if you want to save money, that's usually a pretty popular goal. People want to save money. It's relatable to maybe something like maybe some independence, maybe some opportunities to maybe work towards buying a car or buying a house or whatever. So it's relatable to something. Okay. If it's not relatable to something, then you really don't have that passion or that connection to that specific goal. Okay. The last one is time related. T is time related. I'm going to put time frame. We have to have an ending time frame. Okay. When I earned my master's degree, my sister gave me a picture frame. And in the picture frame, it had a picture and it had just had the word someday on it. How many of you ever made a statement like, someday I would like to fill in the blank? Anybody ever make a statement like that before? Right. And so my sister made that picture frame and she's like, today's that someday for you. You've reached the finish line. But if we don't know what the finish line is, then someday could be tomorrow, someday could be 10 years from now. And so that's why with our goals, we want to have a time frame. It allows us to be able to say at the end of that time frame, did I reach my goal or did I not reach my goal? Okay. Now, is it horrible if we don't reach our goals? No, not at all. Okay. I think I've shared with you all my goal of climbing to the top of all 50 states before I turn 50. That's one of my goals that I set for myself back in 2019. Okay. Very weird goal. Okay. I have very weird goals. So, no, I'm not. So in 2019, okay, 2019 is when I started, I had two mountains, Texas and Maine. So I had two mountains. Okay. When am I turning 50? 2032. Okay. So there's 2032. And here's 2025. At 2025, I'm at 41 states. Okay. So I have nine left, and I have this amount of space to go in time. Okay. To get my nine. But what happens if life gets in the way and I get stuck at 41? Okay. And so if 41 comes along, or if 2032 comes along, and I'm only at 41, okay, if my original goal was 50 all the way up here, how big is this gap from 2 to 50? It's a pretty big gap, right? And then from 41 to 50, it's a smaller gap. That's what we call a gap analysis, okay? It's what we call a gap analysis. My gap was this big when I started. Now it's this big. Okay. So now am I going to continue on my goal? What did I do? Or am I going to maybe set a different goal? Maybe I'm going to change things up a little bit. Okay. Personally, the day that I found out that Alaska was 20,000 feet and takes 3.5 weeks to get to the top, I was like, maybe I might be editing my goal. Maybe it's 48 before 48. But that's how we work with our goals, right? We can change our goals. They're not set in stone. Okay. Sometimes things happen. You want to get your associate's degree, or you want to get your bachelor's degree, or you want to own a house, or you want to own your own business. That's fine. That's great. But sometimes the time frame gets off a little bit. Doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means we're going to reevaluate, stop. And now instead of my gap being this big, my gap is only this big. I'm a little bit closer. Okay. So this is basically SMART in a nutshell. Okay. How we can relate this to management and leadership is that in the future, when you are a manager or you're a leader of an organization, you are going to be working with your team members, your associates, to help set goals for them. Okay. It's very similar using that SMART method I think one of the biggest things when you're setting goals and helping your employees reach their goals is that attainable factor. If you set goals that are way too far outside of their ability to attain them, then they're never going to reach it. And then they're not going to feel successful. Okay. And so we don't want to make it too easy, but we also want to make it a little challenging. And so sometimes what we can do as we're developing that is we can develop stair step goals. Okay. So here's your big goal. And to get there, we're going to work on these three things. And then at the end of this third thing, then you'll have that full goal already reached, right? We're going to do, rather than try to throw everything at one person at once, we're going to introduce little kind of topics for you to improve on. And then at the end, we'll pull it all together, okay? So figuring out what those priorities are for those individuals to focus on. Otherwise, they don't know where they're going. Okay, so you might sit down with them and outline a SMART goal. This essentially gives them that plan of where they're starting and where they're going to. Okay, so you might have a very generic goal. I want to save money. Okay, how many of y'all want to save money? Okay, cool. So that's a very generic goal, and it's a very worthy goal. Is it a SMART goal? Is it a SMART goal? I want to save money. Is that a SMART goal? Is okay. So smart as in the sense that it's all smart capital letters, right? Yes, it is a wise goal to save money. Okay. But is it smart in the context of what we're talking about? No, it's not specific. I don't know how much, if I saved $1, if I went to Kohl's and I saved $5, well, guess what? I saved money, right? But then I got my Kohl's cash and then I gotta go spend that later on and they're gonna get me to spend more money there that way, right? Or if I go to, I don't know, if I usually get a venti coffee and today I got a grande coffee, well, I saved money. Okay. So to make our goal smart, we want it to be specific. So how can we make save money? How can we make that a specific goal? Set an amount. Absolutely. Right. So you might write up here, I want to save money. And then you put right here in the specific column, you put $1,000 or $500 or whatever you want to save, right? Measurable. Is that measurable? Yeah, because you can decide at the end of your time period, if you have $1,000 saved, then you reached your goal. If you didn't, then you didn't reach your goal. Okay. Is it attainable? That's only for you to answer. Okay. How are you going to do that? Are you going to save $50 per month or $50 per paycheck? And so $50 per paycheck, that's going to take you 10 months minimum to save $1,000. Okay. And so you have to think about all of this. And then you put together at the very bottom, I want to save $1,000 by June of 2026 by saving $50 per paycheck. That's a SMART goal because it's more specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's related to maybe you want to go on a trip, maybe you want to do something else with that $1,000. Maybe it's your birthday and you want to go and have a great party with friends, right? Whatever that relatable aspect is, and then the time at the end, and then you write it and you bring it all together in that bottom SMART goal. Okay, so that's how you're going to fill out this page right here. Not right now, but later. Okay. One thing I think is really important when it comes to goal setting, especially with our employees, is when we sit down and talk with them and have a conversation about what their goals are, okay? Then once we've had that conversation of what their goals are, what they want to achieve, then we need to do what we can to support them in that goal, okay? We want to make sure that we're checking in with them. We want to make sure that there's opportunities for us to celebrate those small wins, right? Okay, maybe you have an employee that comes in late every single day. Comes in late they give 120% when they're on the job, but they're late every single day. Okay, and so maybe our goal is let's reduce the number of times that you're late to 5 times a month. Okay, 1 day a week. Let's start there. And then the first day they come in on time, let them know, hey, I recognize you're here on time. Awesome job. Thanks for coming in on time. Okay. Or the first time they miss, okay, this is your one this week. Next week, we got to make, or this week, you got to, the rest of the week, you got to make sure to try really hard to get here on time. Okay. So we want to support them on their goals. Why are they coming in late? If they're late 15 minutes every single day, we'll ask them, why are you late 15 minutes every single day? It could be that the lineup for their kid's school doesn't open until a specific time and they're rushing over here, and then they hit traffic, and that's okay. So let's figure something out rather than just say, you know what? The clock says we start at 9, we start at 9. I know you give 120% while you're here, but you get here at 9:15, and that's not fair to everybody else. So I got to let you go. Okay. So, I feel like there are changes in how we relate with our associates and our team members. Okay, it used to be very cookie cutter. Everybody comes in at this time, everybody leaves at this time. Okay, and so now it's like, well, what can we do to help you be successful? Okay, what can we do if it means that you're not going to be stressed, and I know that your clock in time is going to be 9:15, right? Because you come in at 9:15, you're stressed because you're late. People are yelling at you because you're late. Well, if I just change your start time to 9:15 and your clock out time to 5:15, right? Does that work? Does that help? Okay. Now, if they start coming in at 9:30 and they're coming in late again, well, there's another issue. We have another conversation, right? But is there something? Now, that all is dependent on the position. If you are a prep cook and your restaurant opens at 11, that difference of 15 minutes can make a huge difference whether you're ready to serve that day or not. Okay. And so it is all kind of position dependent. All right. The other part of chapter 7 is dealing with conflict. How many of you have experienced conflict at work? Just a couple of y'all? Where are y'all working? Because I want to go work where there's no conflict. No, conflict is inevitable. We're going to have conflict, okay? Those of you who raised your hand, don't tell me the details, okay? But which category do you think that your conflict stemmed from up there on the board? Daniel. Okay, so status struggles in what way? Okay, yeah. So sometimes people, we talked about in the previous chapter how people that power, um, for lack of better words, that power trip that our managers sometimes pull on people because they feel like I have the title. Okay, good. What else? Yes. Okay, that can be a huge thing. Differences in values and beliefs. We talked about um, in 1170 in the professionalism class. We talk about how when you are going for a job interview, you are interviewing that company just as much as they are interviewing you. You may leave a job interview and be like, I don't want to work for this company. Okay. Or as you're doing research for that company, you're like, you know what? This isn't the company for me. I need to go find somebody else to work for. Okay. And so that difference in value and beliefs can absolutely cause some conflict and some contention. What else? Yes. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Like that game telephone where you tell somebody one thing and they tell it somebody else. By the time it gets to the end, it's a completely different message. Yeah. In fifth grade, okay.
the way around.
Uh-huh.
Whisper in the ear. By the time I got to them, there was
Completely
something
different. It wasn't even nothing related to. Yeah, exactly. Those communication barriers can cause conflict. Absolutely. Okay. And so we have to figure out what can we do in order to alleviate those conflicts, right? I think it was a podcast I was listening to today, or maybe where did I see this? I saw something about no, it was a podcast I was listening to. I can't remember which one it was, but they were talking about how the new Apple iPods have the ability to translate in real time. And so if somebody's speaking a foreign language, then in their ear, it could translate into whatever language you need to listen to, and then you can communicate that way. I thought that was really interesting with technology. Um, competition for resources. What is that, and how does that create conflict within an organization? I have a very silly example, but go ahead, Daniel. Okay. Um, that might actually fall under the status struggles. Like having someone who may, you thinking like someone who maybe is perceived as more of a favorite from by the manager. That might be a little bit of a status struggle because they kind of feel empowered to be that person. Competition for resources typically are physical resources. Well, money, obviously, time, of course, maybe not necessarily physical, but time for sure. I'll give you an example. When I was at the Sheraton Gunther Hotel, in our dining room, we would have soup and salad buffets on the weekends when it was really busy, especially right before a show at the Majestic Theater. Well, our banquets department very rarely serves soup as a banquet, but they started selling soups with the new fall menu. And so they didn't have any soup spoons. So they would come to the restaurant and take our soup spoons. And so then when it comes time for our soup and salad buffet, we had no soup spoons because they were up in banquets. And we had to go find them. Right. And then it got to the point where we realized there was a loose panel in the wall. And so we pulled the panel out and we would hide our soup spoons in the panel so the banquets wouldn't come in and get it. Right. That caused contention. I'm trying to set up for my shift and I want to have a great shift. And in banquets, you're guaranteed a tip because it's built into the cost. As a server, I have to work for my tips, right? Not that the banquets don't have to work for tips, but I get paid as a server based on that. So if my guests don't have soup spoons to enjoy the soup, then that could negatively impact my tip, right? So that causes contention. And so it's really important that we want to figure out what is the root cause of that contention and that conflict so that we can actually resolve it. We need to evaluate and figure out what is the root cause of the conflict, okay? How do we want to address it? What are some possible opportunities for us to address this? Do we have the resources available to address it? Okay. Um, and then we want to understand what is our ideal conflict management strategy. Okay. Avoidance is a strategy. Just avoid it. It may, depending on the situation, it may just resolve itself just naturally. Okay. Um, accommodations, we may have to make some accommodations for one group, one person, or another in order to resolve this conflict. Okay. And ideally, both parties have to make some compromise. Okay. So if one person is just really stubborn and they don't want to compromise, okay, other people are willing to compromise, well, then the root of the conflict that's still around is this person who's not willing to compromise. Okay. How do we potentially get those people to work together? That collaboration. Okay. We might take, remember at the beginning of the class, beginning of the semester, I know it was 10 weeks ago, but we did that color personality. So maybe we can figure out, okay, what colors work well together and how do we get them to collaborate to resolve this conflict? Okay. And then lastly, competitiveness. Sometimes, if we can have some kind of way to inject some competitive um, strategies to get people working together to get the team moving forward. Um, what any kind of competitions or rewards or anything like that we can implement can be helpful in reducing that conflict. Questions, comments, concerns about conflict or goal setting? Conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen. Okay. Hopefully you don't experience it too frequently. Okay. What happens if you experience conflict too frequently? You quit. Okay. Somebody else quits. Yeah. What's that? Start taking notes.
They start like documenting.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And that's really key as a manager for you to understand and remember the documentation is key. Um, writing things down when things happen. If you sit and talk with somebody, having them, you know, acknowledge the fact that you had this meeting. All those sets of documentation can help build to when you have a situation where you have to let somebody go. This is the reason why. Yeah. Um, people are very, that's what I'm looking for. People are very litigious, meaning they're really very quick to sue. And so if they feel like they were wronged in any way, okay, especially if there's some buzzword that they can throw in there, then oftentimes they will, okay. And so by having that documentation, that's like, yeah, no, we didn't fire you because of this. We fired you because of this, and this. And here's the reason why we fired you, not because of that. But good try. Thanks for trying. Okay. Um, so, yeah. Any questions about goal setting? No? Yeah. Um, hmm. Let me think about that. About example of competitiveness in conflict resolution in a culinary specific. Let me think about that, and I will get back to you. Because I don't have one off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up. Um, all right, what time is it? 10 o'clock. Let's do chapter 9. And then because that chapter 9, I think, is only a few slides. And then we will go over I'll give you time to either work on your goal setting and or your group work. All right. Oops, that's not what I want. Duplicate. There we go. All right, we're going to talk about diversity in the workplace. Okay. And prior to, I would say, I don't know the exact time frame, but in recent times, diversity really focused specifically on age and gender only. That's how we identified diversity in the workplace. What age were our associates? What gender were they? That was pretty much it. Okay. What other some other ways that we identify diversity in the workplace? What's that? Experience. Absolutely. Good. What else? Yeah. Okay. Relation to religion. Good. Anybody else? The culture that people come from. Yes. Yeah. What's that? Their financial background. Okay. What else? Their abilities. Absolutely. Education. Yes, absolutely. All of these are different ways that diversity can manifest itself in the industry, okay, in the workplace. Now, I know that in recent years, diversity has kind of morphed into like a negative connotation, okay? And I think it depends on how diversity is implemented. Um, if you are looking to build your workforce um, for the sole sake of having visual diversity, that's maybe not really the right reason to build your workforce and implement diversity. Now, if you're trying to implement diversity in the sense that you want to um, bring in people that maybe have more education, or maybe you want to bring in people who, let's say you're a restaurant and most of your staff are just trained on the job. And you want to bring in people who have culinary arts degrees because they have gone through school, they understand the theory and the foundation, they've taken some management classes, right? And so by bringing in people who have culinary arts degrees, when the majority of people don't have them, that allows you to maybe hopefully start elevating the product that you can put out. Okay. So I think diversity with intention, and figuring out why we're hiring those certain individuals and bringing them on to our team, I think that is important. Diversity for the sake of diversity and is just, I think, is just not necessarily an effective way. Okay. So, ways that we can benefit from diversity is we can hopefully serve our customers better. Okay. Um, if we have people, let's say, let's keep using that culinary example. If we have people who understand recipe development, we have people who understand recipe costing, then maybe we can reduce our costs. I had a student who did his practicum. He was an assistant general manager at Panda Express. And then within a year, he was a general manager of Panda Express. Okay. In his first year as a general manager, he got a $10,000 bonus. He shared with my students one time when he was a guest speaker. He had a $10,000 bonus his first year as a general manager because he was able to cut his costs, because he implemented things that he learned in the cost control class here at St. Philip's. So by having those people who have that experience, that could help us identify ways that we could reduce our costs. Okay. When I was working as a wedding coordinator, as a wedding planner, um, I was always looking at that, ways that we could reduce costs but elevate our service. Um, and so those are some great ways that we can benefit from the diversity of our team members. We also have the concept of groupthink. What is groupthink? Anybody have an idea of what groupthink is? Yeah, absolutely. They all think the same thing. Everybody here in this one business, this one office, they all think the same way. Okay. Well, if we have that group think, if we don't have that difference of thought, then we don't have those different ideas that can come in and say, hey, we've always done it this way. So why don't we consider doing it this way? And then if we can consider doing it this way, maybe that could save us money, or maybe that could elevate our services, or maybe we could attract a different group of customers if we didn't only think this way. Okay. And so that's one thing that with diversity allows us to try to avoid that group think. It brings in people with a different perspective. The one thing I think is important is that we need to have diversity at all levels, right? So we could have diversity in our front level, our frontline associates, the people that are serving our guests, okay? But if at our management level, there's no diversity, there's only groupthink, then there's no possibility that that people are that maybe things are going to change or shift. And so I think that needs to be at all levels of the organization. And we talked about in a previous class when decisions and planning are being made and plans are being developed, it's important to bring in those people from the front line that have that experience. Okay, we're going to change from Square to Toast as our payment processing. Okay, why don't we bring in some people that deal with Square on a daily basis rather than the manager who just says, oh, well, if we go to Toast, we're going to save 50 cents per transaction. And then those frontline people come up, and this is nothing against Toast or Square. I don't know anything about them. I'm just using those two examples that just popped into my head. Okay. But those frontline associates come up and they all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, what used to take me 3 buttons now takes me 7 buttons to get to on Toast. So that's not very efficient. And so that makes my job harder. And so I think it's really important for us to, as we're building up those ideas, is to bring in those people that have the most impact on what that change could happen. Let's see. All right, so the last few are just going to be some questions. I don't know if these are on your exam. They were at one point. I have to go back and actually download your exam and make sure I have all the questions, your final exam. But these are some questions that were on the final exam at one point. All right, so managing diversity requires managers to do what? A, B, C, or D? What do you think? B, yes. Okay, we're trying to eliminate those barriers that will help people be successful. Okay, I used to have little clickers, but that technology went out of date. So that's what we used to be able to answer in your own little clicker, but I don't have that technology anymore. All right. A goal of diversity is to achieve what? A high performance organization, right? With all the diversity, with all those different perspectives, we can try to become the best, highest performing organization that we can. According to a study of gender issues in hospitality management, female managers reported that what? It is C, unfortunately. It is C. All right. Which of the following statements about employees who do not speak English is false? Which one is false? The answer, according to the textbook, is A. Okay. So just because someone who is a non-English speaker has a blank look on their face does not necessarily mean that they don't understand what you're saying. They could still be processing what you're saying. They maybe just aren't reacting in a way that you think. Yes. Oftentimes it's easier. No, that's true. Oftentimes it's easier for non-English speakers to understand English rather than speaking it. So sometimes they can understand it, but they just can't speak it. So that is true. Which of the following is commonly held negative perception young workers have about older workers? It is all the above. Not always true, but it is the perception. According to the ADA, an individual is considered to have a disability if he or she what? It is all the above. It is all the above. Okay. Oops, I did not. I didn't make this one bigger. I apologize. Which of the following about fostering diversity within an organization is false? Which one is false? The answer is C. It used to, like, whenever you did all the clickers, then it would the little graph would pop up. I forgot to delete that. I forgot to delete that graph. Ideally, diversity training program should what? A. Correct. All right. So at this time, we are now caught up with chapters 7 and 9. And at this time, in the last 22 minutes of class, I'm going to give you an opportunity to work with your group. And then also, if you want to work on your SMART goal assignment, you can. There is an assignment in Canvas. So you can write on this and take a picture and upload it, or scan and upload it, or there is a digital copy. You can type it. Either way doesn't matter to me. But this is due next week on Tuesday. Okay, your SMART goals. If you came in late, make sure you get one before you go, and then also make sure